Hi, I'm Ted Porter. I'm an architect who grew up in New Albany, and I've been practicing in New York City for the past 40 years or so. I designed this house in the early 1990s on a nice neighborhood corner lot in New Albany. And the entrance here is a kind of lower scaled bungalow style, frankly influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright, I would like to think, one of my heroes. And it's in contrast with some of the things you'll see inside the house, both in its lower scale and the way that it greets, or rather it houses or allows the owner to drive into the porte cochere and go directly into the front door. I like the idea that the owner enters through the front door instead of some sort of back door or kitchen door. They get to enjoy the same procession as a guest would enjoy. So here we've come through the porte cochere and we go into this rather grand front door into an entrance hall. So here I am in the entrance hall, and the entrance hall is this transition space between the outside, the porte cochere and the front porch, and then going into the large central room that's the organizing room of the house, the living room. Like all good architecture, I think it needs to be based on historical precedents, and there are a lot of historical precedents for this house. The living room that I'm in, I think of as being my kind of influence of the Italian Renaissance architect Andrea Palladio. And Palladio worked in the early 17th century, and he often did these big rectangular volume rooms that were the main center of a house surrounded by other volumes or smaller spaces. And that was the kind of generating idea for this house. So this living room has a 17-foot ceiling, which allows it to clear the roofs of the surrounding rooms and get these clerestory windows that bring in light from all four directions during the day. And that light changes significantly as the days go on. It's ended by a very large screen porch. I think every house in Mississippi, basically every house in America should have a screened porch because that's the reality of our climate and the bugs we live with. And I also think that having a high ceiling like this with these ceiling fans means that a lot of the year you don't necessarily need air conditioning nor heating for the house, and especially for the screen porch. When you can open the doors out onto it and open some other windows in the house and have through ventilation. The color of the blue at the top was really a literal reference to a sky, and the framing and all is, while not literally the structure of the house, it's a kind of visual representation of the structure of the house. When you have a large room like this, you also need large-scaled elements, architectural elements. And that's why the fireplace is a pretty grand-scaled fireplace for a house, but it seems to work for me in this room. And it's the stepping up and the express chimney going up out the roof. And I'm very happy with the owner of this house who keeps it immaculately and beautifully furnished and beautifully decorated. So while I'm a contemporary architect, I do like a bit of formality. So even though this kitchen is visually connected to the dining room, it's really separate, a separate room, so that I've always felt like the owners of the house could make a mess in the kitchen and then go to the dining room and leave it. And it's still, even though it's a separate room, it's connected in two different ways to the rest of the house. It's connected back to the entrance hall as well as to the dining room. One other thing about it is I always think of the kitchen as being a place, especially in the morning, just personally, because I always have coffee. So it's nice to stand at the sink and have an east-facing window so that you get morning light. So the dining room is off the living room and the screen porch. And I like the idea that if you open this door to the screen porch, as well as the doors in the living room to the screen porch, you have this nice circular flow, and there's not a dead end in the house. The same goes for the way the kitchen connects to the entrance hall and the dining room. The only time I like a real dead end is when you're going to bedrooms, which should be private and separate. And once again, this room has a sloping ceiling, but it's not as high as the living room. And like all the other rooms of the house, its ceiling is basically leaning on the walls of the living room, making the living room even more important from an architectural point of view, as supporting everything else. So one thing I would say about the screen porch is that going back to my references to Palladio, I always like this idea of a completely cubic room. And this room is basically a cube. It's 17 feet by 17 feet by 17 feet tall. So there's something inherently stable about that as an architectural form. This space, which acts as a library, allows this transition space between the main living room and the primary bedroom suite, and which has doors both to the bedroom here and then a whole walk around going to the closet and the bathroom area. So I'm in the primary bedroom, which has a main space for a bed, but also a small sitting area with a lower ceiling, a kind of cozier space, in contrast to the big volume of the living room. And once again, the ceiling of the bedroom area itself, like the dining room, is leaning against the living room walls. It's being supported by it. And then the door behind me leads to the bathroom and walk-in closet area. So because the house is built on a fairly steeply sloping lot, yet I wanted all the main rooms to be on one level, we do have a lower partial level that includes a garage and a guest room and some other storage spaces. And to connect the two, rather than just having a dark, dingy stairway, I wanted to have a little natural light coming in and a more interesting space to go up and down. So we created this sliver of space with a stair that also has windows up high from the north, more of the clear story windows, giving it natural light. So it's great to come back to a house that you designed, a number of years ago and see that it still works so well for the owner, and that as an architect, I'm still so happy with the way it looks. It seems to be holding up over time, and I very much appreciate that.